Now, I will welcome you to tell us about data products in real life.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Thank you. Hi. Hello. It is my first time speaking in Europe officially with a crowd, so I'm pretty happy to be here with you all. Since I'm new here, in a sense, but I have been in the industry for a while, I think it's more than fair that I do a proper introduction, both of who I am and where I come from. So let's see if this works. Nope. So I come from a country that, spoiler alert, they say it's that has a lot of potential, but usually that, they tried their best at the end. Brazil has a lot of problems, and I came here to live now in a city that does this kind of stuff. And if you haven't understood, this is actually this. And I don't understand why they say my country is dangerous when they're literally putting children on top of other people so they could fall. I love Barcelona, and I moved not because I don't like my country, but because I think that there are many ways in which we can bridge the gap and learn from each other. So I wanted to be a little bit of that bridge, and I have a studio both in Brazil and in Spain, because one problem is not enough. You need two of them. But coming back to my story a little bit, I started out as a data analyst in 2011, actually, so I've been in the data industry for a while now. It has been more than 10 years. And the first thing that I did was a method to analyze social data or unstructured data in social media, and we created a bunch of cool stuff with it. So don't have a lot of them here, but we did come up with a lot of interesting things. And then someone was like, well, would you like to use that method to maybe build a company with it? And we can just do a company around that. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So 2014, we developed and designed the first ever, and I believe that it was the first ever in the world, actually, because there weren't any online, at least, that I could find back then, data experience, there you go, data experience company. So it was a company that would actually invite people in to look at unstructured data about their companies, discuss it, and use frameworks to translate what were data into insights, but more into actionable plans that they could put and use in their company. So data science was just starting, and it was something very new for everyone. So we would use frameworks and matrices and other methods to study this and use this. And then eventually someone was like, well, would you like to apply this method for our department? Just that because you've done it in a company and you've done so many projects. We did more than 300 projects back then. And then in 2016-ish, I started working with data culture. So I started implementing data culture in specific departments. So I did a bunch of them in very, very big companies, and I was very fortunate to see most of them become a reality, where we would help big companies and big spaces translate their data into actionable spaces and what we called back then war rooms, which is a terrible name, honestly, or control rooms for very different sectors. And then eventually someone was like, well, would you like to apply this for an entire company and not just for a department? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So we actually did that. We planned a whole room that was inside a specific retail company in Brazil, and we actually made it come to life, and not just made it come to life, but we actually implemented, built a data science team, built processes, and transformed more than 33 actually challenges that were mapped in 2017 and 2018 into routinely used data systems. From all different kinds of perspectives. And then, but what held with me and what still holds with me to this day is the fact that I work with methods in data, methods in translating information and data to other people. And this is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to present to you the method that we developed and designed, which is called designing data products. Not today, though. Today we're going to talk about something different. But then, eventually, 2019, I thought it was a good time for me to maybe go on my own, because I was already working as a practitioner and someone that was being like hired, but not necessarily having my own studio and my own company. So this is where Odd Studio came along. And at Odd Studio, we do some pretty cool stuff, I would say, and things that actually impact a lot of people. Because I thought for a while that I was making more money to people that already had a lot of it. So we do translations and different kinds of interactive, what we call data products, because they can be anything. They can be interactive websites, just like this one, for example. Or they can be things that we do just for fun, like VizHeads. So maybe if you have heard of VizHeads, we're the ones behind it. And it's a way to visualize all the data viz practitioners that exist, not exist, but the ones that other people talk about when they talk about data viz. And we're actually working on the version 2.0. It was supposed to be already released. But as you can see, we're having a few technical issues with it. It's going to come. It's going to come in a couple of weeks. Wait for it. So we've had a really good run with a lot of different projects, but there's something that differentiates the time that I had to the time that I'm having right now and the work that we have been doing with our studio, which is before, everything I did was very controlled. Everything was in a controlled environment. We had departments, we had companies, and everything that the CEO or the leader, whoever was in charge would say would eventually become a reality. Even though the culture didn't collaborate with it, it would become a reality. But then I was presented with something way bigger called the Grand Challenges Data Explorations in Data Science, actually. And it was a collaboration between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Brazilian ministry. And that's how we got into simply chaos. Because then things didn't depend on one department or one person or whatever. It was just a whole bunch of stakeholders that need to collaborate and cooperate and really be willing to make something happen for research to get out there. So what they asked us, would you teach this method that you have for scientists? And would you help scientists and researchers put this into practice? So what I'm actually going to talk about is how we put data products in the real world. But to cite our friend here, it's actually a way of putting like data products in the wild as well, because it's like you don't know what's going to happen. It's just chaos. Or another way to say about it or to call it is to say that it's a data product guide for you to avoid getting crazy and just enjoying the things that you still do in data. So yeah. But at the same time, maybe you can help change the lives of a lot of people, which is something that we actually did. So I'm going to talk about 3 projects, and I'm going to give you 3 words of things that we do and we value with the learnings we've had for the past 4 years. And these are projects that are high gain, scalable, and high impact, which is really hard to do. So the first one I'm going to explain to you is called the Stational Weight Gain Recommendations. Boo, boring topic. Yeah, no. It's actually pretty cool. So science rocks, actually, right? So basically, a mother, when it's pregnant, she needs to gain weight. But the old charts that we had when we started this project back in 2019, actually, were the Atala curves. So the Atala curves have a few issues with them. They don't use data that portrays a lot of the population, so they use data that is actually not based in local population. It's called Intergrowth 21, the database, and it's not really representative, especially of Brazil. The second thing is that it uses body mass index as a way to calculate the weight gain, and it's not really a way to calculate weight gain, so mothers don't really know how to get to that index. It's really hard for them to follow along. So this is something that's used both for medical practitioners and mothers when they're doing the pre-checks. And then also, there was one chart to fit all different ranges of weight, from low weight, which is the one that you have here, and overweight, the one that you have over there. And it's basically a classification chart, not a monitoring one. So we started working with the researchers that were doing the data based on local population, and we did thousands of variations of this. Like, you have no idea how much time we spent studying what is the index that we're going to be using, what are the colors that we will be using, or this color is appropriate for everyone that's going to be reading them. Does this have enough contrast? Can this be printed? Can this be digital? Is it visible? What are the perfect distance between everything? And we would use both coding methods and also graphical methods to get to the perfect version of it. We studied all colors that we could and variations to portray all the different ranges. So we got to really interesting ones that could represent this, and we finally got to the new curves. So the new curves would use this gestational weight gain and a percentile to show if mothers were actually within the trajectory that they needed to be, instead of using the body mass index that didn't inform them of anything. we were using local data. So finally, we were portraying how the recommendations should be for Brazilians. And we convinced the government that they needed 4 pages in the booklets, because these booklets are printed, actually, and sent to every municipality. And we were like, awesome, we got it. Amazing. We finally have it. And then we went to test it with the Ministry of Health, researchers, and everyone. So this is the team during COVID, still masking up. And then the first question that they ask is, can this be photocopied? And we're like, what? What do you mean photocopy? Can you photocopy these like many, many times and it would still show the different charts? And we're like, oh, I was not expecting that. So imagine us trying to go over to find a photocopy machine, because you can't even find photocopy machines anymore. And we did it. So now the curves actually are photocopyable. Is there a word? I don't know. Anyway, we were like, finally, we got the charts, like, it's done. The recommendations are here. They are working. There are different ways why the red colors are in specific places. We show not only the weeks, but we show the semesters as well. Anyway, and then you have to remember that we're still in another person's government, right? So this was a past government. And they had this thing with green and the flag, the Brazilian flag. We have to bring the Brazilian flag back. So they put fucking green in everything. And even in the charts, when they went finally to production, and we were like, yeah, this shit is out, we finally did it. No, let's make it more Brazilian. And we're like, oh, and then we had so many back and forth and conversations about why the colors that were chosen. They changed the distances between stuff, they changed the colors, they changed the font. And if you're already suffering as a designer, you can imagine Bruno, our designer, is suffering too. So they became green, but at the same time, we got them to maintain the colors. Yay, awesome. Did they change the font? They did. Okay, anyway. So the first word I want to bring to you is temporalidade, which is temporality, which means basically the quality or state that is temporal or that passes us by. So we have to understand that the individual functions in a way, or functions in a velocity, let's say, right? We function really fast. Everything changes for us every minute. But then the market is always trying to catch up, and they have their own certain way of changing, but it takes a longer time for the market to change, to adapt to people. But then you also have the academia, which is even slower. And then you have society as a whole and all the things that come with it. So you have to understand, and you have to ask yourself, like, can your design remain relevant through time? Because it really doesn't matter how much effort you put into your design. The people that are in charge of translating that into other stuff, and they are going to actually put it out there for the whole public, are going to change it. And what you have to do is enough so they can do their work better. And this is the real struggle. So first word, temporalidade, or temporality in English. So you have to accept that no matter what you do, it will become the reference for people for years to come. But the environment surrounding it will change, and you cannot control it. So that was the first time that we were facing all of this, like, it takes so much time to put something like this out, and so many people, and so much effort. And there's nothing you can do to try to control it. Even if it's the best work you've done in your life, someone is gonna fuck it up because of I don't know, because they need to put green in everything? I don't know. Anyway. Project 2, and I'm going to come back to this later, okay? But just keep that in mind. Project 2, promoting playful parenting through social activities for children. So there's a really cool researcher in Brazil, and she researched many different communities, which is really hard, to understand what are the activities that are developed for children in all of these different places in Brazil. And she works with a specific program that's called Criança Feliz, or Happy Children, where they help vulnerable communities understand how they can help children develop through these activities. So not only did she do a pretty good understanding of the geographical distribution, and if you don't know this, usually those areas up there are really left out when we talk about Brazil. People don't go that far. They usually stay down here. So this is a pretty good sample, I would say. She also did a pretty good effort into mapping traditional communities. So really traditional agricultural and like all kinds of indigenous and quilombolas, Ribeirinhos, all kinds of types of communities. But the pilot that she had was basically a spreadsheet. And we wanted to talk to this company that I cannot say the name, but they put those blocks together and then they farm stuff, you know? Yeah. We wanted to tell them that there was a different way that we could show this data, and that there was a different way that we could access this catalog of 500 activities for children that parents could use, that anyone could use basically, because when you're like with a child and there are different like months and ages that they have, so you have specific types of activities that you can do with one or the other, and you're just tired and you don't know where to start from, the activity is going to be available for them. So we did something super simple, unobservable, really, really fast, that we could maybe show them there were different ways that we could actually portray these activities. So each one of these, you can filter it, and then each one of these can be selected, and then all different posted here are different activities for different domain categories. And then if you clicked on it, you would even see like who was it appropriate for. And this took us 3 weeks to put together, I would say, something like that. It wasn't perfect. It had a lot of things to do, but it got the job done. And basically what we wanted to say is that selecting the type of domain, but also the age and being age appropriate is super necessary and super important. So the second word is, what is necessary? Necessary is something that you were comfortable with taking forward. And basically, when we're talking about data projects, they're your briefing, they're your resources, your team's expectations, and your audience's expectation. And between those things, you have scope, you have desire to make a difference, you have design possibilities that you want to explore and tag possibilities. But you kind of have to start narrowing them down to answer what are the compromises you need to make in order to just deliver this? What sets your project apart from others? And how is the work that you're doing going to be executed? And what are the selected features that you're going to move forward with? And then it convinced them. It was enough to convince them. And we got a second round and a second funding to put the project together. So this project here hasn't come out yet. It will come out because we just changed government again. Eventually. But it's called Mosaico do Brincar, which is a playful mosaic. And it's to improve the quality of home visits to promote playful learning. And it actually became an app. So now we have an app and we have everything that's like necessary for visitors to go to these vulnerable communities. There are more than 25,000 visitors in Brazil, and they visit more than 3 million children every year. So this is going to be in the hand of every visitor that goes out there to personalize, profile by age, or even like plan and visit the selected activities that need to be done. And then eventually this is going to be open so every parent and every teacher and everyone can actually use it, which is pretty cool. So once we've selected what was necessary, and once we did and focused on what we had in front of us, we were actually happy with what we had to move forward. What you have, is it enough to move forward? And even the app that we have right now is not perfect. Like, there are many, many things to improve. But we have to understand what is the minimum necessary thing that we need to put out so other people can improve on it and use it. So it's more about, like, you're happy with what you have, but you're even happier with what you've left behind. And you have what you need to move forward. You're more than just necessary, you're needful. Everything you have is needful, in a way. And then the last project I'm going to focus about has nothing to do with children or mothers or anything like that. It has to do with mines and mining, which is a big problem, as you know. So after a big project, a problem that we had, a big accident, it wasn't an accident, but disaster, that happened in Brazil, safety around mining actually increased a lot. So those carts that go around mining places, they beep for absolutely everything. But when everything is beeping, you don't know if something is important or not anymore. But you have to understand that we were hired to do a very tricky work with this one, because we were not close to our user. We were the ones teaching the method to our clients to conduct the workshops so their clients could implement it, and then finally the mine supervisor would use it. we wouldn't even talk to the mine supervisor. We had to like completely trust that our client was doing the best that they could. So our job was to put the method forward. So the third and final word for this is non-attachment, or desapego, which is like completely not be attached to details, completely not be attached to what other people are going to do with the design that you make. And it just comes up. And also temporality, because this year can take like so long for it to actually, to actually become a reality. So, for example, this is what they gave us. And then we had so many different meetings, talks, and workshops to work them through. And we actually got to a pretty good final design that had like completely mock data because we didn't have real data to work with. But what was important was that they actually understood the task. And then I haven't even seen the final results. Like, it's not even something that I have access to. But I do have an audio that was sent to us by the client when they watched this. They were in a meeting in the US, and the client was presenting this product to other people. And then he sent an audio to us to tell us how it went. So I'm going to play it. It's in Portuguese. But I have subtitles here. Let's hope it works. But the audio is not going to work really well, so I apologize for that. But you will see. Let's see. Go.
Cara, acabou de acabar a primeira apresentação. Foi um show, porque o cliente preparou a apresentação inteira e assim, colocou o cara na Linux lá no céu. Você não acredita como tanto que ele elogiou? Em um mês ele está vendo resultados assim, vivos na melhoria de segurança na mina dele. Cara, ficou todo mundo assim, caralho. E ele elogiou demais, cara. E saiu melhor do que a gente esperava, cara. Não precisou da gente defender a oferta. O cliente defendeu como eu nunca vi.
So basically, I don't know how it went, but I think it went pretty well. There's a big relationship between going from data to action. There's a big road ahead. Like, going from one point to the other is just a whole bunch of different steps. And sometimes you just have to trust the process. And there are also things that are things that you can actually not only understand about it, but you can turn them into reality and help your client through it. But there are things that you just can't measure. So you have desires up there, you have dreams, beliefs, courage, choices. And the best thing you can do is try to make them into reality. You can try to make them into concepts. You can try to make them into methods, models, tools, frameworks, interfaces. But the truth is, can you provide the tools so others can build upon your work? That's a big, big, big problem for you when you're working with big, scalable problems like this. So by practicing desapego, or unattachment, non-attachment, we could trust and validate our method. We could focus more on function and content and less on aesthetics. Knowing that aesthetics is just as important. I know, I am on your side. Don't worry about it. But it could definitely take our work to new heights that we couldn't have done by ourselves. So to finish off, I would like to say that these are the three words that we usually use to describe and talk about projects that really go out of our hands. There is no way of controlling them. They're just going to go into the wild. Which is temporality, necessary, or needful in a sense, or non-attachment. And these are things that you don't stay still, but that you should consider your design a first step in that direction. As much as you can control your design, you can't control the environment. The second thing is, like, you should focus on what you need to move forward and leave everything else behind. And you should take your user with you in the process so it can be continued when you're done and when you're gone. So yeah. And then you're going to ask me, okay, so does this mean that you're okay with whatever they do with the charts and whatever they do with the things moving forward? Of course not. Look at the shitty thing that the new government did. They even made it worse, you know? Like, it's like, it doesn't matter which person is president of your country. If they're crazy or less crazy, you're just going to have people over there that are going to change it. They even changed the colors again. Why? Why do that? You know, go through the work of doing it, selecting new colors. I don't understand. So yeah, I would say that there are a lot of things that my country has that can only be done and delivered in my country that are amazing. But I would definitely say that there's one word that doesn't translate to English, which is called mato. The loose translation of Matu would be wild nature. It's basically a nurtured space that has been left unattended and nature took over. And many people believe that the rainforest and the Amazon is actually something that was given to us. But that's not true. That's a wrong belief. It's actually built upon something called terra preta, which is black earth or black dirt. So it's believed that the ancient inhabitants of the Amazon intentionally created terra preta by adding organic matter. This is called biochar and involves burning organic matter in a low oxygen environment, which transforms it into a stable form of carbon that can be stored in the soil for thousands of years. So basically, it's the difference between what you're seeing in one side and the other, which is one is way more fertile and anything can grow in it. So my question to you and where I leave behind is, in your need to perfect your design and make it perfect, are you also controlling how much it could thrive if you weren't standing in its way? Because I believe that when you're doing things that are for the wild and when you're designing data products as complex as the ones that we have been, we should design less for gardens and more for Matu. Because what we need to build is actually a space or a sustainable space for other things to grow. I know I'm over my time. If you like my content and if you like what we do, I dab a little bit in social media. I do talk a little bit too much, as you can see. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Letizia. That was wonderful. Do we have any questions from the crowd? I think I have to make it one or two.
Thank you. Two.
Here, we've got one.
Oh, thanks for the presentation. It was really amazing, actually, to listen. And the topic is really actually really familiar with me as well, because through my PhD project and also the work I do now, we hear a lot of requirements from stakeholders, and in the end, it got messy. And my actual question is, I see you have some like a method, like a kind of framework to work with, but I was wondering how you usually kind of communicate with the stakeholders or like users about those like three things. I can start with the temporary and also the necessary and also those kind of things.
I would say that these are words, more internal words for us to understand our role in those in those projects. But things that we do to communicate with stakeholders that have worked in the past. First of all, I think it's really hard for stakeholders. They don't have time. So whatever you can do to make their time more valuable, the better you're going to get answers from them. And the truth is, it's easier for people to criticize than to build. So sometimes we even deliver things that we know are shitty, are very, very bad, but we need them to be able to point us to the right direction and tell us where things are wrong. So I usually say, the sooner we can make mistakes, the better, because then we know we're going to be on the right path. We're going to be on the right. But it's always a challenge. It usually depends on, where they come from, what is their background. And one thing I notice, unfortunately, is that when you don't have a diverse table of stakeholders, the stakeholders that are present are going to push in the direction of what they believe and what their background is. So you really have to be able to bring to the table other people that can point them into different directions than their own. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's all about who is going to put their money, their name, and everything behind it. And depending on the country, that can be very challenging. Yeah. I feel your pain. Yeah.
This is Gerard Smit through online chat. Thanks for your thoughts on the methods you all used. Could you also say something about the way you organized teams that have made all these wonderful products?
Yeah, sure. So we're a small team. We used to be 12, we're now 8. But usually we have someone that is able to translate things into tech, but more creative tech. We have obviously designers, but we define our designers into product designer, graphic designer, and UX and UI. Those are the 3 types, if I can say that. That's sorry, I don't want to offend anyone. Expertises that we look for usually, because these are things that we work with. We have someone that's specialist in data science and data analysis. And we also have me, which does nothing. No, just kidding. I help make sure that the business objectives or the organization's objectives are aligned with scope and everything else in the team. So I usually start projects and help lead mediating these different stakeholders that we have, which is really, really hard. So this is our configuration. This is what has worked for us. And whenever we need someone that's like the expert in something, we look for them.
Fantastic.
Thank you.